हाँ तो मैं समझ रहा हूँ। बिल्कुल सही है।
So yesterday we were talking about the chapter, the neural coordination and control, and I was talking about the transmission of nerve impulse. Where we discussed 3 stages: resting membrane potential, action potential stage, and the third is the repolarization. This action potential state and the action potential is what that is referred to as impulse. So what we call the action potential, it is the actually the impulse. And what is it? It is the transient change in the membrane voltage that takes place. And it is propagated in a wave-like fashion up to the synapse, and there the synaptic transmission takes place. Neurotransmitter is released by the presynaptic neuron, and then that neurotransmitter acts on the postsynaptic membrane, particularly on the receptors of the postsynaptic membrane, where it acts, excites or triggers. So these 3 stages we discussed. Now then we move on to the structure of the spinal cord. Now we have to study today the reflex action and reflex arc. Reflex action, reflex arc. Now before talking about these topics, now let us first discuss the structure of the spinal cord. You know the structure of the brain that we discussed, that it is divided into forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Now these forebrain that is comprised of the 2 cerebral hemispheres and the diencephalon, and the midbrain is there. Then you have hindbrain, in which you have pons and medulla oblongata, and this medulla oblongata, it continues in the spinal cord. So we will talk about the structure of the spinal cord before going to study the reflex action of the reflex arc. So if we see the spinal cord, if you see the TS, then you will see this like structure and gray matter in between. So this is the gray matter of the spinal cord, and outside you will see white matter. So yesterday I told you that this matter is white because of the myelin sheath. So here you have all the tracks or the fibers or axons running which are myelinated, and that is why they appear white. And in here you have the grey matter. Now this is the case opposite to the brain. Now in the brain I told you that grey matter is the outside, and inside you have the white matter. Here in the spinal cord situation is opposite. You have the grey matter inside. Grey matter means the portions of the neuron cell or the cell bodies, and the axons which are myelinated, they appear as white because of the myelin. So this is the white matter, this is the red matter, Then this is diffusion. This is the medial septum. So you have many neurons in this. Now, what happens from here? A nerve, a root ganglion, a nerve arises from here, ventral root. So in the spinal cord, you have the dorsal root and the ventral root. Two branches that come out of the spinal cord. One is dorsal root and other is ventral. In the dorsal root, you will find a ganglion, dorsal root ganglion, a kind of swelling, bulging here. Similarly, on the other side also, you will find the dorsal root and the ventral root of spine. So you have here also the ventral root of spinal cord. Now these combine to form. Now these combine to form a spinal nerve. So cell bodies are here and fibers come out and go into from the dorsal root ganglion and the ventral root ganglion. You have the fiber. So this is the structure of the spinal cord. Now we will talk about the reflex action and the reflex arm. Now what is reflex? What do we mean by the reflex? Actually, reflex is a reaction. We can call it as an automatic reaction. Automatic reaction. It is a stereotype reaction, but you remember that it is a kind of an automatic reaction that occurs without the involvement of your consciousness or your thought. It occurs instantaneously. As the stimulus is received, I told you one example yesterday that if you come across or you touch a hot object and then immediately you will remove your hand because the receptors in that, this is a kind of a reflex. Now, so reflex or reflex action is an automatic reaction, automatic action that takes place in the response to an appropriate stimuli, and that is automatic and a stereotype reaction that is there. Now, then we come to the reflex arc. What is reflex arc? Now, reflex arc is a neuronal path. It is a kind of a neuronal pathway. It is a neuronal pathway that is involved. The neuronal pathway that is involved in a reflex. This kind of a reaction. So it is reflex arc is a neuronal pathway that is involved in a reflex. Now these neurons are connected, I told you, with the synapse, and for each and every action there is a pathway through which that is particular for each and every action or the reaction or the response or the behavioral response, whatever it is. The brain has a peculiar pathway through which the message comes into the brain and goes out of the brain. So such pathway is known as neuronal pathway, which is particular for each pathway. Now this is the neuronal pathway that is involved in the reflex, is the reflex pathway. We refer to as reflex pathway or reflex arc. So what is reflex arc? It is reflex arc is the that is involved in a reflex. Now we will see this with a very good example of knee jerk, knee reflex or knee jerk. The example that is given in your NCERT book, the knee jerk or knee jerk or knee reflex. Now, in this pathway, suppose your knee, you know that in your knee you have a bone cap-like structure that is called as patella, right? So, and it is joined to your knee bone, the leg bone with a ligament. So you have here ligaments. Now when you ligaments to which this patella is joined to the bone. Now when you strike here, then what will you see? Immediately there will be a reaction and this leg is lifted up. It will move from this position to here. As soon you keep on striking, this knee, this whole leg will move forward. This is the knee jerk. And this is actually a reflex. It is a reflex. As soon as you hit, you will see this kind of a reflex. So this forms a reflex, knee jerk or knee reflex, and the pathway it takes. Now from the you have here the bone and the muscles. You have the muscles. This is the bone, and you have the here also the muscles. Now this patella, the bone part, is joined by the to these muscles through tendons. So you have the kneecap joined with these muscles, the tendon, and the patella joined with the ligament. So what happens? When you strike this stretches this muscle. That stimulation is passed on to this muscle, and then from here there are certain receptors. Now these receptors are called as muscle spindle. You can see in your book that muscle spindle is there. These muscle spindles are the kind of receptors that are present that are sensitive to stretch. So when you strike here, this muscle and then stretches this muscle. And these spindle muscles here, which act as a receptor, they then carry the message. These are stretched, they are sensitive to this, so they get stimulated and they carry the message to the, now it will be carried to the spinal cord level. So in the case of reflex, mostly it is solved or it is answered at the spinal cord level, right? So this goes through this to the grey matter. Here, grey matter, it contains the cell bodies. So here it ends, right? Then there is another neuron here that takes the message. So you have, this is the afferent fiber. As I told you that the fiber that brings in the information is referred to as afferent fiber, and that carries out the impulses to the effector organ is called as efferent. So this is afferent fiber and this is efferent. Now this is a motor neuron. Now this is the sensory part. This is the motor neuron that is stimulated by this, and then it sends its message through the efferent. Now here comes the efferent fiber. allows for this to muscle to contract. When it contracts, then you will see the change in the illumination. So this whole pathway is a reflex arc. Arc means like this. It is starting from in this muscle spindle, then you have the afferent fiber, then the cell body of this, and then it synapses with the cell body of the motor neuron in the spinal cord. From the spinal cord, the messages are coming to the efferent fiber, and it gives the information that this motion is moving. So it shows this kind of circle. That is it. Now, if we see this, then you can realize that there are certain elements, important elements in a reflex arc. Now, reflex arc can be very simple. It may contain two neurons. So, in a reflex arc or a reflex pathway, minimum two neurons are there. That is the simplest reflex arc. There are many reflexes in which more and more neurons are involved, but in this case only two. One is this afferent neuron, other is this efferent neuron. There is single synapse here, and that is why it is called as monosynaptic reflex. So the first element in this is the sensory organ or the receptor. So here the first part of the reflex pathway, you have the first element as the muscle spindle. Second is your afferent fiber, then your cell body of the afferent neuron. Now this whole neuron along with the cell body will be called as afferent neuron. So this is your element. Then next is the motor cell body, and then the efferent fiber and the effector organ. Now here the effector organ is your muscle. So it can be effector organ. In other cases, it can be some other gland or something else. So in this case, we have a reflex. So this is your knee reflex. The example explained in detail. So this includes reflex arc, and I have shown you the pathway. So the pathway through which this goes on is your reflex arc. And this is one of the simplest reflex arc or neuronal arc or reflex pathway that you can see. Now we come to the next part of your chapter, neuronal coordination and control. Next part, that is the sensory perception and sense organs. Now, as I told you earlier, that nervous system has two parts. The nervous system has two parts. One is sensory and other is motor. So the nervous system has to be informed. When it has to act, then it has to be informed. Through certain things, through the sensory part, that something is wrong or some stimuli is carried, and then the brain answers through its motor part or through its motor function. So the sensory, that sensation, the sensory part has sensation, that is very important. Now you can sense the things, and for that the term used sensation. Yes, you can sense, but there is a difference between sensation and sensory perception. Sensation is when your sensory system is working, it is informing the brain. But if brain does not analyzes it and it does not perform the motor part, then it is the only sensation. But when you have the sensory part, the brain answers, and through the motor division, that impulse pass through the effector organ, that complete thing, then it is called as sensory perception. And in case of coma, you must have seen that there is this sensory perception and sensation is disturbed, and that is why you see they are unable to perceive. This sensory perception is very important. It is very important because one has to be informed about its surroundings, environmental surroundings, then only you are able to survive. So it is very important that sensory perception should be there, so as that animal or the human being is informed, well informed, or the message goes to the brain things. It may be a temperature change, it may be anything else, or that should be informed to the brain, so that the animal or the human can act accordingly and can save itself, and also it is required for various functions. So sensory perception is very much necessary. So now for this sensory perception, then we have certain receptors or organs that inform our brain about the sensory changes, and those part, those receptors, they are referred to as sense organs. So they are sense organs or the receptors. Now these receptors, sensory receptors or the sense organs, they inform. There are receptors which are present even inside our body that informs about the various changes. That is a different thing. Today we are going to talk about the sensory organs. Now these sensory organs can be, like eye, ear, nose. That nose has smell, that senses smell. Then eyes, they sense the light. So they are the organ for the sight. The photic stimulation of the brain occurs through these eyes. And then you have ear, nose, your tongue, skin, that is for the touch, temperature and cold changes, that is informed. So these are all the sensory organs that make part of the sensory system, sensory division of the brain. So then the eyes, first of all we will discuss about the eye. Eye, is very important. That is for this side. So let us see and discuss first the structure of eye. Eyes, where they are located? They are located in the orbit. Our skull has an orbit in which our eyes are located. They are somewhat spherical in shape, and then we draw an eye. Basically, eye, it has 3 layers. So here you have 3 layers. Then here you have a lens. This is your cornea. Outermost is sclera, then you have the layer choroid, and the innermost is retina. So So you have three layers that covers your eyes. Then you have a lens, the chamber between the lens and this region is the vitreous chamber, filled with a viscous fluid, and the chamber between the cornea and the lens is the aqueous chamber. Here you have ciliary body. You have iris, and in between here pupil, and here you can see the optic nerve. So basically this is the structure of the eye. So your eye is spherical. In front you have the cornea, and then the lens, aqueous chamber, then vitreous chamber, and three layers. Now these three layers we talk about. Now sclera, it is the outermost layer. First thing is that it is outermost. If we see, it is the outermost layer. Then it is made up of connective tissue. It is made up of connective tissue. You have to remember all these things. Made up of connective tissue, and remember the anterior part of sclera, it forms cornea. So जो anterior part है sclera का, it forms cornea. So the anterior part जो है it forms cornea. So you must remember these three things about the sclera. Then we come to choroid. Now choroid, choroid is, as you can see, it is a middle layer. It is middle layer. Now second thing you must remember about this, that it is a very thin layer. Mostly it is a thin layer, but its anterior part is thick and forms ciliary body. You have ciliary muscles also that hold this lens. So you must remember about the choroid. There is a middle layer, very thin layer. It is middle layer, very thin layer. Anterior part thick, forms ciliary body, and it contains blood vessels. Blood vessels. It contains blood vessels. Now we come to a very important layer, that is called as retina. Now, retinal layer is very much important, and we will talk about the retina. I will talk about this, but before that, even this extension of this choroid layer forms iris. Now iris is the colored part of your eye, and it is opaque colored part, that is the visual color. Eye color is because of this. In the center you have the pupil through which the light enters, and the diameter of this can be changed accordingly. The eye can change. This is because of the ligaments present here. This is the lens. So light passes through the cornea, through the lens, and it enters and it reaches the retina. Now here the retina is very much important. So we will talk about the retina. Now retina is the layer where the image is formed, and from this, through the optic nerve, that image, the information about this image is carried to the brain, and from brain then the messages come back, and then you are able to analyze and see the image, right? So retinal layer, because then you should know what is the mechanism. You talk about the structure of the eye and the mechanism of vision. Now before talking about the mechanism of vision, you must know about the different layers and the different cells which are present in the retina or retinal layer, right? So retinal layer. Now in the retina, this is, you have a layer which you have the photoreceptor layer. Photoreceptor layer. Or you have here the photoreceptors. Now you know that in the eyes there are two types of photoreceptors. Eye itself is a photoreceptor, and in the retinal layer you have photoreceptor cells which are present, and they are of two types. You know, one is the rods and other is the cones. Now you will see that these rods and cones are plain rod, and then you have conical structures which are cones. So this is rod, this is cones, and you have many more here and this. And then above this you will have the bipolar neurons. So next you have the bipolar neurons. I told you that bipolar cells have one dendrite and one axon. They have one dendrite and one axon, and these are the bipolar cells. They are mentioned in the books. So bipolar cells are there, and then you have ganglion cells. Ganglion cells are there. These are the ganglion cells, and then they connect to the optic nerve. So now if you see through the eye, the light comes to the cornea. Now we discuss the mechanism. Through cornea it enters and then it reaches the retina. So to the retina, here these photoreceptor cells, they are stimulated. Now they have a pigment, photopigment, which rods, they have the photopigment which consists of opsin plus the retina. opsins and the retinal. Now, when light falls on this, then this retinal is removed from this opsin. Now, retinal is removed. So, when the light rays falls in on the eye, they are focused through the cornea and the lens onto the retina, and this generates the impulses in the rods and the cones. The photosynthetic compound that is present, which is the combination of opsin and retinal. Now this retinal is removed, and then what happens? This opsin, it undergoes certain changes. Now this it's undergoing the change in the structural change in this opsin, then results in the change in the membrane potential. Now this membrane potential then changes their dissociation. Now this dissociation, it is induced by the light. Now this light, it induces this dissociation. There is a change in the structure of opsin that changes the membrane potential of these receptors. They become depolarized, and then the permeability changes occurs. There is depolarization, or the action potential is generated. The impulse is generated. Now once this impulse is generated, then it is passed on to the ganglions through the bipolar cells. There are other cells also present in the retina, but these potentials are passed on to the bipolar cells, and then they are passed on to the ganglion. And from the ganglion they are passed on to the optic nerve, and from the optic nerve it goes to the visual cortex of brain. Visual cortex of brain. Now in the earlier class I told you that the brain, the forebrain consists of cerebral hemispheres, and cerebral hemisphere, the outer region is the cortex, and here that cortex, part of each and every part of the cortex is specialized for pressure sensing. So there is a cortex which is important for the analysis of this image, that is sent by the retina, or the information or the impulse that is sent by the retina to the brain is analyzed, and that part of the cortex is called as visual cortex, that is located behind in the occipital region of the brain, which is the back side of the brain where the visual cortex is located, and then it analyzes. Now when this brain analyzes, and then it sends the message to the eye, your image is seen, or you are able to see. So this is the mechanism of vision, where their light is there, which causes the dissociation of that pigment. Now which is a combination of opsin and the retinal. Now retinal, what is retinal? It is an aldehyde derivative of vitamin A. So that is why we say that the deficiency in the vitamin A, it induces the problem, it causes the night blindness, it is located in the rod. Now if we see rod and cones, then rods and cones, rods जो है, they are specialized for the dim light, sight in the dim light, and the cones are responsible for your bright vision and color vision. So you have many types of cones are there. So red, blue, green, and these cones are responsible. The combinations of these are responsible for your color vision. Cones are responsible for bright vision, and the rods are specialized for seeing in the dim light. Now one thing I must say here, I didn't mention it earlier, but now I would like to mention. Now in the eye here you have optic nerve and certain blood vessels. So here no vision is possible. So this part of the brain is called as blind spot. This part of the vision is called as blind spot. called as blind spot. And somewhere here, there is a pit, there is a pigmented structure which is called as macula lutea. This is called as macula lutea. Lutea means yellow color. So this is a yellow colored structure, and in the center of this there is a pit which is called as fovea, and this fovea is the point, is the site where you have the brightest vision. Why? Because at this point in the eye or in the retina of the eye there are only cones. So cones are present in this, and because of this you have brightest vision. So you have one blind spot where there no vision occurs, but here you have the macula lutea, and within this you have a point spot which is the yellow in color, yellow spot this is, which is called fovea, where your vision is brightest because of the presence of only the cones are present, so you have this vision. This is the mechanism of your vision. So this is about the eye, and that is the vision. So this is the eye are the sense organs that are sensitive to light. They give the photic stimulation they get, then the brain is informed about the image or the color or the light, and through this you have the vision. The brain analyzes. If your eyes is okay but the visual cortex is hampered, then also you will be not able to see the things because your brain has not analyzed. Okay. So you have the eyes and the visual cortex of the brain that participates in your sight vision. So this. Now the next important region we come is the ear. Now the next important is the ear. So here you know it is for hearing. So test hearing we have. Excuse me. Then for hearing, so here also we will discuss about the structure of the ear first, and then we will talk about the mechanism of hearing. And how does the structure of ear is able to cause the hearing or the mechanism. Right? So इसको complete बंद कर दीजिए. ये कोई है नहीं. पर counting session. So now the structure of ear. Now we can see externally, we have the external pinna. be back in just 5 minutes. Just wait for the class. Within 5 minutes I will come in. Please, please. Okay. So now you have external payment. Now this your ear, the external part you can see of the ear. Now this you must remember is a mammalian characteristics. All the mammals have this external pinna. So one of the characteristics besides having the mammary glands and the hairs in the body, they have the external pinna, mammals. Right. Right. Now then this leads to a canal-like structure, that is the external canal. External canal, and that then the tympanic membrane. So this is the tympanic membrane. Eardrum, the ear. Then you have another chamber-like structure where a tube goes to the pharynx, opens in the pharynx, which is called as a eustachian tube. And here you have three ear ossicles. Here is the oval window, and then here you will see a coiled portion, that is your cochlea. Then you have here three semicircular canals you will see. Now, if you see, now this is the structure of the, to simplify it, we know that we divided into three, the external ear, which comprises their external pinna, external canal, and it ends in the tympanic membrane or ear. And then you have the middle part of the ear or the middle ear. Now this middle ear, it has three ear ossicles, three ear bones there, they are referred to as ossicles. So you have ear ossicles, three ear ossicles, which are named as malleus, incus, and stapes. So malleus, incus, and stapes. Malleus is this one. This is malleus. This is incus, and this is stapes. So the ear ossicle that is attached to the eardrum is malleus, and the ear ossicle that is attached to the oval window on this side is the stapes. So these are the ear ossicles. Now then we have the part which we call as inner ear. Inner ear, innermost part of the ear. Excuse me. So cover the with A1. You have the cochlea and the semicircular canals. Now, if you see the inner layer, it is divided into inner ear. It is divided into two parts. It is also called as labyrinth. It is also referred to as labyrinth, and it has bony labyrinth, bony part, which is referred to as bony labyrinth, and the membranous part. Bony part and the membranous part. Now these structures are very important because they are organized in such a way so that they can perform their functions. In the eye you see, you saw all the parts, that is important. For the vision, and this is for the hearing. So now it performs the function of hearing. Where you can see the hearing, it is also involved in the balance of the body. That is also important for the balance of the body. Just excuse me. Then, now we talk about the mechanism of how mechanism of hearing. So, how this mechanism occurs? That the sound waves, you know, the sound is present in the form of wave. So sound enters through this. ये बहुत दिक्कत होती है आपको। ये आज सब्जेक्ट सीखने में भी दिक्कत होती है, अदरवाइज सुनेंगे। Then this external pinna
आज की आप नहीं क्लोज करते हैं, आप नहीं क्लोज करते हैं।
So we will talk about the mechanism of hearing in the next time. Today we have done lesson because it is very important chapter. So please revise all these things, and the next time we will come with the mechanism of hearing and the other sense organs also we will discuss. Thank you.